Early game bug types are some of the most tragic Pokemon in the entire series. Of course, not every Pokemon is supposed to be amazing, especially those that you encounter near the beginning of the game. But still, many of these early game bugs feel pathetic, even compared to the other early game Pokemon available. These bugs truly fail to stand out in any meaningful way. Many are just worse versions of other bugs that already exist, sharing similar abilities and move pools. They are often extremely underpowered and have designs that don't seem to make any sense. And it really doesn't help that bug itself is such a terrible type on its own merits. But that's what makes it interesting whenever one of these early game bugs actually proves itself useful in a competitive context. These Pokemon are the ultimate underdogs. They are designed to be forgettable and bad, yet sometimes they sneak their way into high-level competition with actual, meaningful advantages not offered by other Pokemon. This is rare, but it does happen. And some of these early game bugs are just uncharacteristically good Pokemon that function well in competitive without needing any underhanded tricks to do so. Let's rank all of these early game bugs from worst to best in a competitive context. I'll be ranking them in a competitive singles context here because frankly, in VGC the majority of these Pokemon are just never seen at all and are completely unviable. At least singles has lower tiers where weaker Pokemon have a place to exist competitively. So let's get into it. Subscribe to the channel so that I can deliver a heartfelt and personalized gift to the bug type Pokemon Shelmet. Thank you. At the very bottom of the list, it should come as no surprise, it is Ledian. One of the worst Pokemon ever created. A truly unfortunate Pokemon in every dimension. Ledian doesn't make any damn sense because they themed this guy around punching. He's got little boxing gloves, a great visual design that captures the imagination. But it has 35 attack. It's an absurdly low attack stats. Ledian is paling in comparison to the damage output of Trapinch, and that is just a tragedy for a fully evolved bug. And of course, early game bugs are supposed to be bad, underpowered, not the greatest Pokemon of all time, but this is a case where I think the visual doesn't line up with what the Pokemon does at all. There is no correlation. It has a massive special defense stat, and yet it is weak to so many common special attacking types. Fire, ice, electric. Bug flying is such a bad defensive typing with so many problems. You've got the ability Early Bird. It lets you wake up a little bit faster. But I think you'll find, Ledian, that upon waking up, you'll simply be put to bed again permanently from any incoming hit whatsoever. And that's a permanent sleep that you cannot wake up from, I hate to tell you. It has Reflect and Light Screen, which gives it some utility. It's got Baton Pass. I think in Gen 3 you can do Agility Pass, Ledian, but it is so much worse than so many other Pokemon with these moves. I mean, having these moves is nothing special. So many Pokemon have Reflect, Light Screen, Baton Pass. It's really nothing that outstanding. Ledian has the signature move Comet Punch, which you might as well just not even have anything. It's got 18 power, and it hits 2 to 5 times in one turn. It even has a miss chance. Why 18 power specifically, I don't know. Such a cool sounding move is so disappointing. And it's normal type. Why couldn't it be bug type at least for some stab damage? No, it couldn't. Because that would be too much to ask for Ledian. And as a sick joke in Gen 5, they gave it Iron Fist for an impressive 1.2x power on punching-based moves with your monstrous 35 base attack. It's like salt in the wound. And Ledian fans thought it was more of an insult than a buff, to be honest. Ledian does have some comedic value, but has little in-game value. Up next is Beautifly, and we're already seeing a pattern, aren't we? Ledian is a bug flying type with the ability Swarm available to it. Guess what? So is Beautifly. This is what they do when they have a deadline coming up and they've got to add 10 more Pokemon to the game. Let's chuck in 10 bug flying types with Swarm that are all the same as each other and call it a day. There's so many of these. There are so many bug flying types with Swarm, and they're all often bad. Beautifly is one of them, and Beautifly is atrocious. I'm sorry to tell you. It's got very bad stats. The visual design's alright, it's a butterfly, but also they could have at least given this one unique trait over other ones. Like in Gen 3, this of course doesn't even have Quiver Dance because that doesn't exist yet. What does it have at all? It has nothing over Butterfree or the other bug flying types. It has nothing. Even over Ledian, at least Ledian, it stands out a bit more. Eventually though, they did give this Quiver Dance, which is actually a option that not many things get, so that's something. That's not much of a help. You're so rock weak. You have little in the way of defensive value. But Quiver Dance is a fantastic move, so that's at least better than Ledian, I can say that. But that's not much of a benchmark to aspire to, is it? I've been told, though, I think that Beautyfly is good in the contests in the game, so it has a purpose there, at least. So we can give it a little bit of respect for that. Congratulations, Beautyfly, for living up to your name in that sense. Up next is Dustox, another guy that evolves from Wurmple in Gen 3. This one's a bug poison type, and it's got a little bit more advantages going for it than Beautyfly and Ledian, I think. It also gets Quiver Dance later. It's got the ability Shield Dust, actually a pretty good ability that makes you immune to secondary effects of attacks. Bug Poison, you can say, is a slightly better type than Bug Flying. You're not ×4 rock weak. You got some meaningful resistances. You're immune to poison at least. You have access to Black Sludge. Maybe that's useful. So Dustox has some traits going for it. It's at least a special leaning bug poison type, which I think was more unique at the time when it came out. But of course, a fairly forgettable early game bug that is not going to stick around for very long in your party, I imagine. Up next is Mothim, and you're not going to believe this one, folks. They really broke the mold here. This is a bug flying type Pokemon with access to the ability Swarm. I mean, this is a real innovation. Mothim is... I forgot about it until I made this list. I forgot about Mothim. What does Mothim have to offer? It's got Tinted Lens. Guess what? Yanmega already did that. I think Butterfree... Who else did that? Someone else did that. You're not unique, Mothim. You don't offer much. It's better than the previous, though, because it has Tinted Lens, which is a good ability. Tinted Lens allows you to deal double damage if the enemy is resisting your move. That's good. Allows you to do big neutral damage with flying and bug type moves and whatever. You got U-turn for pivoting, but your stats are bad and you're a Mothim. I'm really struggling to come up with any adjectives to describe Mothim right now. It exists. Are there any Mothim fans in the audience? Make yourself known, because this is perhaps the most forgettable Pokemon of all time. Maybe we should let Mothim have his day. Today is officially Mothim Monday. When has this Pokemon ever had any acknowledgement from anybody? Everybody in the comments acknowledge Mothim's existence with me today, because no one else will. No one else will. This is bug flying type number 17 with Swarm. No, they've forgotten about him from the history books. They're trying to erase him, and I won't let it happen. I won't let it happen. Up next, Wormadam. I think it's a funny Pokemon. It has a very weird looking visual, and it has different forms. It's at least unique in that sense with the different forms going on. But the base Wormadam, which is bug grass type, at least it's not bug flying, but this is perhaps even worse. Bug grass is so atrocious. ×4 weak to fire is... I think it would be quicker to name things you're not weak to with this typing. The guy at least has Quiver Dance, which is interesting that this has Quiver Dance. It does, though. So that's cool. You got Bug and Grass Stab, I suppose. The ability Overcoat has some merit to it, granting an immunity to powder-based moves, such as Sleep Powder and Spore. It's funny that later on you just become inherently immune to them anyway because of grass typing, but, you know, you're at least immune to Sandstorm and Hail damage. That might come up one day. So it's got traits to its name. Are they good traits? Arguably not, but that's okay. And the stats... I mean, we don't need to kick this guy while he's down. The stats aren't good, but 36 speed is crazy on a Quiver Dance Pokemon. That's just a little bit of a tragedy. Moving on. Beedrill is up next. A famously awful Pokemon, but also an iconic Pokemon. It's one of the most recognizable bugs in the series. Probably top 3 along with like a Butterfree and something else. I don't know. Shedinja, I guess, is popular. Beedrill is up there as what is perhaps a mascot of the bug type, and yet it is kind of a disappointing Pokemon in terms of its actual in-game traits. It also has the ability Swarm. They love this ability. It's their favorite. Bonus damage to bug moves if you're at low health, as if you're surviving a hit ever. It's got Bug Poison. Typing, sure thing. It's a physical attacker, I think, and yet it only has 80 attack and 75 speed. The stats are really some of the worst ever for a fully evolved Pokemon. I think that Abra has more impressive stats, possibly. It at least has Toxic Spikes, though, so you can use it as a spike setting lead. It's got Endeavor as well, so you can use it with Sash. It has U-turn. It has some moves that can do things and provide an advantage. So for that, you could say Beedrill is better than the Pokemon mentioned so far. I think it also gets Baton Pass. I mean, so many things do get Baton Pass, but they can use that in Gen 3. You baton to Magneton. I've done that before. That's fun, but it's an unfortunate Pokemon. Mega Beedrill's cool, though. We're not talking about Megas on this list. I'd rather talk about the base form bugs on their own merits today. But Mega Beedrill's pretty good as well, if you want to end on a positive note in the Beedrill section of this video. Up next, Vespiquen. Pretty cool concept, bee Pokemon. It's got options like Attack Order and Heal Order that are themed around it being a queen bee that can direct other bees to its bidding. Kind of a fun idea, but doesn't translate to anything meaningful in actual gameplay. It's just yet another bug flying type. This time it doesn't have Swarm, although honestly Swarm might be fitting with a bee Pokemon, but I guess it's fitting with any bug, isn't it? This one has pressure instead. I suppose because the Queen is under a lot of pressure with all the authority it has, which stores more PP. The enemy uses more PP against you. And it's got a okay defensive stats for a bug flying type that you find in the early game, but it doesn't really function as a pressure stall Pokemon very well. Its attack order, it's an okay bug move, to be honest. There's not that many good bug moves like this in the early generations, but you don't have much attack to speak of as well. They're trying to be a little bit more unique with this one, but it ends up not really functioning in any meaningful capacity. And while heal order and attack order have a cool flavor behind them, they are very simple moves that are it's literally just recover and a bug. It's like X Scissor, but with 10 more power. That's it. That's genuinely it. They could have done something more with this, in my opinion. This looks like it could be an actual Pokemon. This is not on the same level as a Mothim. This could be a genuine Pokemon if they wanted to do it, but they didn't do it. Up next, Cricketune. This Pokemon is kind of hideous in my opinion. I don't like it that much, but it's got some fans probably somewhere in the world. I've put this higher than the others simply because it has Sticky Web, and Sticky Web's a great move. Sticky Web sets a hazard on the field that lowers enemies' speed on switch in. You can build teams around such an idea. And that's literally more value than anything below it will ever provide. Just making Sticky Web once is going to do more than anything below, in my opinion. It's one of the worst Sticky Web setters in the game. I mean, it's a mono bug with some atrocious stats, but at least it has Sticky Web. So that's genuinely it. It also has Endeavor with Focus Sash, I suppose. As Technician Bug Bite, I guess, and for an early gen moment. It's got Swarm. What a surprise. They gave it Swarm. They gave the guy Swarm. Can you believe it? Up next is Spidops. This one's also, it's similar to Cricketune as a mono bug with very low stats and not much to offer. Flavor-wise, you got to give Spidops a lot more credit, though. I think they've done a good job making a likable early game bug, at the very least. It's got a fun design. It's a spider. It's a bit like a secret agent or something. He's spinning a yarn. He's got insomnia because he never sleeps. And that's a useful ability. It's sleep immunity. That's something. It's got more going on than Cricketune because it's got Sticky Web. It's also got Knock Off to remove an item. That is an extra thing you can do. And it's got Spikes and Toxic Spikes. That's a lot of hazards. So it's got more hazards. It's got also Stakeout is an okay ability that maybe deal a bit more damage on an enemy coming in. 79 attack is not much, but perhaps if we can hope and pray that something switches in on Spidops that's weak to bug, a Stakeout Leech Life could do some damage. Imagine that. Imagine that for me. I do think Spidops is more distinct visually and in concept than more of these bugs, though. You got to give it some respect for that. And this is about what you expect from an early game bug in terms of power level. It's not really supposed to be good, but at least it stands out. And I think that has some value to me. They'll remember Spidops in years to come. They won't remember some of these other ones, but they will remember Spidops. Up next is Orb Beetle. This is an orb-based beetle. It's pretty innovative. It's bug psychic type. That is actually a little bit distinct. It's not bug flying. Can we give a round of applause? They've done something different this time. They did give it Swarm, though. It has Swarm, but it's got some other stuff. It's got Telepathy. That's flavorful. It's got a big brain. It's a psychic beetle. So of course it would have the ability of Telepathy to shield its allies from hits. And it's got Frisk. It's got the psychic ability to identify the enemy's item. That's smart. It's got decent stats for an early game bug, actually. With high defense and special defense, good speed. Interesting options like agility and stored power. Iron defense body press here is a pretty cool mixed attacking sweeper that I think can be used in ZU, even though it's not that good. All that said, though, I mean, bug psychic is pretty atrocious typing. You're weak to so many things. Not only rocks, but ghost and knockoff and, what have you. Fire moves. I guess it's sort of synergizes with weakness policy because you invite so many hits. You can probably live at least one and then go off to the races with agility. It's all right. It's an okay idea, but it's got a lot of uphill battles, Orbeetle. And I don't think Orbeetle has many fans either. I don't know if there's an Orbeetle community out there. And that saddens me. That saddens me a little bit, but I think it's the case. Leavanny is up next. Bug Grass with Swarm. Wonderful. It's got Chlorophyll for some sunny day synergy. That's fun. It also has Overcoat. It's already immune to powder moves, but it's immune to sand now. That's cool. Makes it a bit better with the focus sash, doesn't it? You're not getting sand chipped down. Levani is another sticky web user, and it's a bit better than the ones I've talked about so far because it's actually fairly fast. 92 speed is pretty workable. It has an okay attack stat too, so you can set sticky web and pose a bit of a threat with stab X scissor leaf blade and knock off, especially when it's swarm boosted from being brought down low. So Levani is a little bit more functional of a sticky web setter, I think, than anything we've seen so far. Still not that desirable though. It's no shuckle or anything, but a bit more respectable than what we've seen so far. That's about all it can do though. If it attempts to do anything else, it's a bug grass type with no stats. What do you expect of this Pokemon? Looks like the protagonist of the Bugs Life Pixar film, who was also relatively weak offensively, I think. So there you have it. Is this one of those bugs that disguises as a leaf? That's cool. That's what that is. We're learning new things, aren't we? Wormadam Sandy is a bug ground type. It's a scarce typing. I think it's the only fully evolved example. There's Nincada, but Nincada is only a little creature. This is a genuine bug ground type. That gives it a bit of value because it's a unique typing not often seen, is it? So you got interesting set of resistances and defensive qualities there. This also has access to Stealth Rock, Stab Earthquake, Toxic and Protect. Overcoat has some merit on this. It's got an okay defense stat, but the fact of the matter is that this has low HP, poor stats elsewhere, and although Bug Ground has some unique advantages, it's mostly bad. It's mostly bad. But you can give Wormadam Sandy a little bit more respect than anything so far, I think. It could maybe be used in a lower tier as a utility defensive Pokemon that checks something specific you need to check, because nothing else can. The Wormadam Sandy stands out a bit more. It offers a bit more, maybe. Up next, Parasect is a terrible Pokemon, of course. You find it in that cave, and it's got no stats. Its bug grass is so bad. As we've established, it's weak to everything on the planet. It does have some stuff, though. It's got Dry Skin as an ability, granting water immunity and chip heal in the rain. Pretty good, maybe. You can completely wall, choiced Pokemon locked into water moves. Mono water Pokemon if those are around. So that's something. Water immunity is always nice on any Pokemon. And you got Spore, a coveted option. Rarely anything in the game gets this. Amoonguss, Breloom. It's scarce, and Parasect was the first Pokemon to ever learn Spore. That's a historic figure, Parasect, the first Spore Pokemon. It's a 100% accurate sleep move. And that's just powerful, isn't it? It's powerful. And you got knockoff. So there's some utility here. You can sleep something that's high impact. You can knock off an item that's high impact. And maybe you've even have some defensive value with Dry Skin. It's not much. Everything else about you is working against you, Parasect, but those are advantages that you possess. And I'm proud of you personally. I think it's impressive that you can do anything because they stacked the world against you and yet you have shown that you have something rather than nothing. Wormadam Trash is up next, and it's a bit of a rude name to even call it that. And I don't know if I get it. Why is it trash themed? It's bug steel type. Do people put steel into the trash? They shouldn't, because that's a valuable resource. I don't really get that. Regardless, though, this is, despite its name, one of the better Wormadams, the best Wormadam. Bug steel is a fantastic typing, actually. Famous on such Pokemon as Forretress, Scizor, Genesect, etc. As it's only weak to fire and sports various valuable resistances. They complement each other well because steel loses its weaknesses to fighting and ground thanks to bug. They help one another, these typings. And this guy has Stealth Rock, Toxic Protect. That's good enough for me. I mean, it's obviously outclassed by various other bug steals that exist, but you could do worse than this for an early game bug, to be honest. Overcoat, sure thing. That's alright, I guess. Sleep immunity, in some sense. I think that Wormadam Trash should be renamed to Wormadam Treasure in my minds. Up next, you've got Illumise. That's a bug, and that is how it's pronounced, Illumise. I've been told by many people that this is true. You would never know it unless somebody told you, and that's how you know it's a great Pokemon name that's phonetically pronounceable. It asks a lot from the reader. It requires you to take the extra step to look it up in the thesaurus, and I think that gives this Pokemon some real value. It's a mono bug type. It's really unremarkable in all regards with poor stats, but has the ability Prankster, and that is not only unique, allows it to stand out a bit, but it's one of the best abilities in the game. All status moves have priority, so you can hit them with the Encore with a priority boost, lock them into things, Thunder Wave with priority, Sunny Day to make rain with priority. You could U-turn as well, I suppose. Illumise is a bit worse than Volbeat, because Volbeat has a higher attack stat to hit harder with U-turn, which is your best bug move because it pivots. But it's really a negligible difference between these two. They're extremely similar. I think Volbeat is a worse Pokemon in terms of its name. It's too simple and easy to pronounce. without having to look up the thesaurus, I prefer Illumise, who's more of an intellectual Pokemon, for smart people who like to leave YouTube comments. So I like Illumise a bit more in that sense. I think it's more of a artistic choice. Masquerain is a Pokemon that's up next. I had to look up the lore for this because I'm not sure what this is supposed to be actually. Because it's got patterns on it. It almost looks like an origami figure or something, but I don't know if that's true. It's got, they tell me it has rhombus-shaped wings on each side. They're telling me it's an insectoid. These are things I know about. I want more information, but this is the kind of thing that's been hidden. Anyway, it's another bug flying type, but this one has Intimidate. Pretty good ability, actually, lowering attack. Famously good ability. And it has Sticky Web and Quiver Dance. That's pretty good. So, once again, a bit better than the previous Sticky Web setters so far, with it can intimidate the enemy, that's an instant impact. And after Sticky Webbing, you can Quiver Dance up and click moves. Briefly, this was the only good Sticky Web setter in Gen 9 before other ones got added. So it had a bit of OU spotlight for a brief period, because Ribombee and whatever else, Araquanid, etc. were not in the game yet. Other than that though, Masquerain is clearly, it's another bug flying type with poor stats. Obviously that's going to result in a rather undesirable Pokemon for a competitive environment, but still actually decent for an early game bug, I would say. Up next is Ariados. This is a bug poison type Pokemon. It's also a Sticky Web setter. It's incredibly average. It's got bug poison typing with terrible stats, as we have come to expect with Pokemon in this category. But amazingly, Ariados managed to defy the odds, and it has a small role as a lead in Gen 4 Ubers. Ubers is the format where legendaries are allowed, and Ariados is actually able to anti-lead against Darkrai and Deoxys. If you see a Darkrai, you're not afraid of Dark Void because you have Insomnia granting you an immunity to sleep, so you can set your toxic spikes freely without being disrupted. If you're up against Deoxys, you can hit them with a Bug Bite, live the hit from them, and then him with Shadow Sneak for a follow-up KO. I don't know if that guaranteed KOs every time. Probably not. But that's pretty cool. Little else in the game at the time could do that. Sleep immune, and it has access to a hazard, and it can threaten Deoxys, and it's, you know, not worried about Dark Void. It's not a great option. It's got its problems. Dark Pulse can flinch you. Making one toxic spike, it's alright, but it's not that good against Darkrai. But it's more than can be said for many below it. And then later it did get Sticky Web. It's got Sticky Web and T-Spikes. And Toxic Thread, which lowers speed and poisons. That could have some value against somebody. It is a good opportunity for an ally to follow up against a crippled enemy that's poisoned and has their speed lowered already. So that's interesting. Just because Ariados has a niche in Ubers, I'm not going to act as if it's an Ubers level Pokemon. It's still overall pretty bad, but I think it gets a bit of bonus points for that, I would say. Up next is Centiskorch, and this is a cool Pokemon. This is a cool one. I like this one. They've made something pretty unique here. Centipede with a flaming edge to it. A fire inside of it. It's a bug fire type. It's got the ability Flash Fire for some useful fire immunity and bonus damage on fire moves. It's got a pretty good attack stat of 115. A little bit better than you would expect from an early game bug fellow. The move Fire Lash is cool. Not many Pokemon get this, and it's a great move with a 100% chance to lower defense. That's a good move. Decent physical move pool here too. Leech Life is good bug snab. You got Power Whip for grass coverage, Knock Off for dark coverage, and item removal. And this is introduced in Gen 8 where boots exist, so the rock weakness isn't as devastating as it once was. You can ignore Stealth Rock. All that said, I mean, Centiskorch is still a little bit weak, of course. We're not going to hold this against Centiskorch that much. It's not supposed to be an endgame, elite-level competitive threat or anything. But yes, Bugfire has a lot of bad weaknesses, especially Rock. At least you're not threatened by Stealth Rock with this one, but you could get knocked off, and then you are. A Rock move will end your career in moments. And you're weak to a lot of other things. Your speed is poor. You're not really offering much over other physical attackers. But you can acknowledge that this is definitely a little bit stronger than other bug types we've talked about. It doesn't have much in the way of utility, actually, compared to some of them, but I think it deserves a bit of respect for being more inherently strong in the role it was designed for, like an attacker. I think this is a decent Pokemon in low tiers in Gen 8, which is respectable. Up next is Vikavolt, and this is another one I quite like. It's a bug electric type Pokemon with the ability Levitate, granting ground immunity and spike immunity. That's a pretty cool set of traits right there. It's got some stuff going on. It's got Sticky Web access, nice special attacking move pool, Roost for healing, and a monstrous 145 special attack. I love that. I think it's cool that this gets such a high special attack. rivaling that of many legendaries. Unfortunately though, it's a bit too slow to take advantage of it. Sticky Web allows you to lower things speed, but I don't know how much that comes into play. With this, it's still, even with Sticky Web up, it's going to be slower than a lot of things. Weak to them. As a defensive Pokemon, I mean, its stats are just poor defensively. It may have healing, but it's not going to survive very long anyway. But this is still a cool and memorable Pokemon. Stands out from other early game bugs. And it at least has some cool utility. It can pivot out, it can hit hard, and it can make a useful hazard. These are respectable qualities. Up next, we've got Escavalier, who is a pretty solid Pokemon, all things considered. Escavalier is a Bug Steel type, which is a fantastic type combination. Your abilities are not that special, but, you know, they're not bad either. Swarm, Shell Armor, Overcoat. They're okay, but their stats are pretty damn good for an early game bug. You got 70 HP, it's not bad. Attack is 135, that's very good. And your defenses are nothing to scoff at. This is a pretty good defensive Pokemon that hits really hard. It's a bulky attacker, and this could do good work. The only real problem with this Pokemon is that it's outclassed by others with similar traits. Like Forretress is another bulky Bug Steel type with Overcoat. That's probably a better choice as a defensive guy who can make hazards. And you of course are competing with Scizor, who is the elite Bug Steel type offensive Pokemon with Technician and priority options. Escavalier has no priority. It's really feeling that base 20 speed, which is not good. But other than that, I mean, you could do worse here. This is pretty solid. It has Pursuit even. That's good. That's useful. Doesn't have that post-Gen 8, but you know, we're not talking about that right now. Mega Horn for big damage, Iron Head for Steel Stab. Pretty good physical move pool. Overall, not much to complain about, just outclassed by other Pokemon really. That's Escavalier's big problem. Outclassed by others in the same typing. Up next is Axelgor. This is a bug type Pokemon. It's just a mono bug that is defined by its massive speed stat. Absurd. Base 145 speed, and that alone is going to give this something to do. This outruns most things in the game, and it actually has a pretty good special attack considering. With 100 base special attack, you can outrun and deal pretty good damage with Bug Buzz. And this even has spikes, so this is one of the fastest spike setters ever. I mean, that's enough to be fairly functional. Axelgor actually has a role in Gen 5 Ubers because it is able to outspeed Darkrai and hit it with a super effective Bug Buzz, preventing them from getting an early sleep, forcing them out, and even allowing you to make spikes, which is a good early advantage. On top of that, it actually is pretty nice against Deoxys too, because the Unburden ability makes it even ludicrously faster. Unburden doubles your speed on held item loss, so if you get hit down to your Focus Sash, you will outrun even Deoxys speed and hit them with a big Bug Buzz. What a concept. You even have U-turn to pivot out. So it's a pretty fundamentally alright idea. It's a fast hazard setter. It has, I think, Final Gambit if you just want to do a fast trade and defeat an enemy, dealing damage equal to your own HP and then fainting. So you can use this to trade with things if you want, and you're faster than most of them. I think it's a fairly solid early game bug fellow. Up next is a Pokemon I'd rather not acknowledge the existence of if I don't have to, but unfortunately in this video I have to. Ninjask is an early game bug type Pokemon, evolved from Nincada, and you should have stayed as a Nincada, because back then you had honor, you were an innocent creature in a cruel world, but you evolved into something that I shudder to even look at. Ninjask is kind of an insane Pokemon. It's a bug flying type with the ability Speed Boost. This grants a speed stat stage every single turn. Pretty insane ability. And this is the fastest thing on the planet almost, with base 160 speed. Incredibly fast Pokemon. And the whole purpose of this guy is that he baton passes speed to allies. In Gen 3 OU, the metagame I played the most, this has proven to be a broken concept time and time again. Many think that we should just ban Baton Pass, but Baton Pass has cool applications with, you know, like Swords Dance Pass Celebi, Carmine Pass Lunatone, I don't know. There's cool applications of Baton Pass. It's also just a pivoting move, and there's no other pivoting moves in Gen 3. So we want to keep Baton Pass in the game if we can. But it's proven to be broken in many avenues. In most generations, they have just banned it. But in Gen 3, that's not the case. And passing speed to allies is a concept that has some real potential to break the game, especially when multi-boost chains are allowed and you can pass to a Mr. Mime who ignores Roar, racks up Barrier and Carmine boosts, passes to Vaporeon who racks up more boosts, and then you go to like Octillery who can't be roared out, and then you just win instantly. That was a strategy they used to do. And Ninjask is the catalyst that makes such a thing possible. In the current rule set, it's not that bad. As long as you have Roar somewhere, you're good. Just get rid of the bug. Tell it to leave. But it can still get you in a bad matchup. For much of the lifespan of Gen 4 OU, when it was current and stuff, Ninjask was a part of the metagame, passing speed, doing its thing, and being a frustrating menace. So I think you got to give this a pretty high rating on this list, because the concept that this Pokemon is built around is one that is game-breaking, that has proven to be something that introduces a lot of problems, and you can make things fast that aren't supposed to be fast, and you can't really do anything about it sometimes. But post Baton Pass ban in most generations, this is not a great Pokemon. It's just it's a fast bug. Sometimes in low tiers it can be good, but really it's the Baton Pass stuff that was crazy. And by the way, folks, I know I've already received hundreds of comments about this, but let's set the record straight. Baton pronunciation, Google.
Baton.
British English. Baton.
Baton.
You see what I'm saying? It turns out that in other countries, sometimes they pronounce words in a different way. People are calling me objectively incorrect. They're saying, I can't watch this video the way he says baton. You gotta grow up. You gotta realize other countries say things differently. It's childish, folks. Anyway, apologies for that little outburst. Let's move on. Jimothy, what are you doing? Why is Butterfree so high on the list? This can't be right. Butterfree is here, and Butterfree is perhaps the most iconic bug in the series as a Gen 1 icon on the team of Ash, I think. It's a bug flying type. It has the ability Compound Eyes, which grants accuracy. That's pretty good. And the reason Butterfree's high here is because this has a niche in Anything Goes, if you can believe it. In Gen 8 Anything Goes, this is one of the few things in the game with Quiver Dance to boost up and an accurate sleep powder. And in Anything Goes, there's no rules, so you can just keep putting things to sleep. And in singles, that's the most broken idea in the entire game, because you sleep something, it's completely disabled. And if you can sleep multiple things, well, what the hell can stop you? And Butterfree is outrunning everything and sleeping them all, and it's an accurate sleep powder because of Compound Eyes. It can just boost up to the moon, sub between sleep turns, and defeat everything. So Butterfree is a bit of a game-breaking menace in that sense. Butterfree also, believe it or not, has a niche down in Gen 3 overused. It's not a great one, maybe it's a bit overblown for comedic effect. I've maybe exaggerated how good it is, but it's better than you would think, truly. Butterfree with Compound Eyes is one of the few things with access to accurate sleep inflicting and paralysis inflicting, because it's got sleep powder and stun spore. And it can also paralyze ground types, unlike Smeargle, who is the other guy that has that, who's usually better, but Butterfree can paralyze, Swampert, Dugtree, or whatever. And then Butterfree can use Thief to remove an item. So it's actually a pretty decent opener. You sleep something, you steal an item, you paralyze something. And then you can actually come back in later in the game, because in Gen 3 there's no Stealth Rock, so you can come back in and you're immune to spikes. You resist flying hits at least, and you outrun some stuff, so you can get one more paralysis in the books. You got one last utility option, one flex slot on there. Maybe it's Rain Dance to clear weather. Maybe it's Whirlwind to rack up spikes damage, whatever. Butterfree, I've been surprised how effective it is, despite looking so bad in Gen 3 OU. And then it's got the AG set. I don't know how much I'll weigh AG in this list, because it's sort of a chaotic rule set where there's no sense of law and order. And different things are broken, right? But I think you gotta give Butterfree respect for having a role in that world where, Zacian Crown is running around and Mega Rayquaza. That's quite a thing, isn't it? So shout out to Butterfree. Up next is Vivillon. Yet another bug flying type extremely similar to Butterfree with all the same traits I just spoke about. Compound Eyes, Sleep Powder, and Quiver Dance. All the same things that Butterfree has, Vivillon has too, and Vivillon's a little bit better at it, because its stats are a bit better suited to such a thing, and it has Hurricane, which is a pretty damn strong move with Quiver Dance boosts and accuracy. Because of course Hurricane only has 70 accuracy, but Compound Eyes boosts that up significantly. So you get a massive, hard-hitting, stab-flying move with a confusion chance on it that's also accurate. And you're putting everything to sleep, of course, in Anything Goes, because there's no rules against you. So same deal as Butterfree basically, but this one's slightly better at it. Slightly better at the same idea. Up next, I think you could put Shedinja here. A Pokemon everybody loves to talk about, one of the most novel designs in the series. Shedinja, of course, is a bug ghost type Pokemon with the unique trait of having only a single point of HP and no way to boost its HP. The catch, though, is that Shedinja has a lot of immunities thanks to its ability Wonder Guard. The only moves that can damage you are those that are super effective, so you are immune to absolutely everything else. This makes Shedinja an interesting choice that can hard counter certain things if they don't have super effective coverage options to hit Shedinja or status moves to hit past Wonder Guard. So it's kind of an anti-meta pick. Beyond this trait, I mean, its move pool is fairly limited. It's got status moves at least, so it can at least make some progress on defensive switches. It has options like Shadow Sneak for priority. Some attacks, I think it has Swords Dance and it can do stuff, but really it exists to wall specific targets with Wonder Guard. And usually the item choice is going to be something that lets it live more hits. Heavy Duty Boots, ever since that was introduced, became the new premier choice, allowing it to bypass hazards that just one hit Shedinja instantaneously. But previously you would run Focus Sash, which lets you live a single hit from anything that is super effective, or you would run Lumberry to cure status that would defeat you in a single hit like Toxic or Will-O-Wisp. You could also run Safety Goggles to make you immune to Sandstorm and Hail chip damage, which can also defeat you. There's a lot of things out to get Shedinja. It's kind of inconsistent. It's not often seen in competitive, but it does have specific situations where it can shine. In particular, one of the famous examples is Kyogre. Kyogre commonly runs Water, Ice, and Electric coverage, all of which Shedinja is immune to. Unless they're running Toxic, Shedinja will hard wall Kyogre, who was formerly in Gen 5 the most powerful Pokemon in the game and has been a staple of Ubers for years. So Shedinja being able to wall that and other legendaries, like certain legendaries lacking fire coverage, which is pretty common, maybe a Dialga or something. Shedinja actually manages to wall some really powerful Pokemon. In the right situation, in the right matchup, Shedinja can be incredible. But it's very conditional, it's very niche. It is not often seen, but I think you got to give Shedinja some respect for having that value in high power level environments. Having such a unique presence, truly one of the most unique Pokemon designs in the entire series, which is not true of most early game bugs. Most early game bugs are kind of lazy and they just slap on the same ability. Shedinja, they made something truly one of a kind. Moving on, we have Yanmega, and I am ranking this guy above some Pokemon that have had roles in Anything Goes and Ubers and high tiers. This might call into question the ethos of my ranking. I think that Yanmega on its own merits is a more powerful Pokemon that is respectably functional and is an early game bug. I think that that's commendable. Yanmega has a bug flying typing and the ability Tinted Lens, which we've talked about already. Many bugs get it. Your attacks that are not very effective deal double damage. In many cases, this is pretty much ignoring enemy resistances, allowing your stab damage to be more powerful. Yanmega has a pretty good special attack stat and speed stat to take advantage of such an ability. What's cool about this as well is that you have another good ability, Speed Boost, which grants a speed boost every turn. You don't have Baton Pass, but you do have the speed effect, which can be useful. Tinted Lens is the more common way to run this, though. Yanmega in Gen 4, respectable rank of UUBL, fairly viable. It's got the problem of being rock weak, but it's an okay attacking lead. It's an alright wall breaker. It's pretty good compared to other early game bugs, which are down in ZU and they're just crap. They're doing nothing. Yanmega is functioning to a respectable extent. And throughout the years, it's been, UU, RUBL around that level, which I think is pretty strong for a Pokemon in this category. They got it fairly right this time. It could maybe use, I don't know, a stat buff, some sort of support to function a little bit better. It's still pretty bad compared to most other Pokemon, but in the world of early game bugs, this is one of the better ones. It's for sure one of the better ones. Up next, we've got Araquanid, and this is a Pokemon that is currently, as we speak, a viable choice in OU, and in fact it's rising in popularity as the most favorable sticky web setter right now. Pretty cool. Araquanid is a bug water type Pokemon. It has the ability Water Bubble, which grants double damage to water type moves, and a burn immunity, as well as a fire resistance. That's an absolutely packed ability with many effects to it. It of course has Sticky Web and many good stab options to take advantage of not only its powerful Water Bubble, but it's just its bug stab. And Araquanid has an interesting stat distribution. It's got impressive special defense, low speed, but it's relatively bulky. I mean, this thing as a lead with Sticky Web can survive most hits in the game, thanks to that special defense. And bug typing offers a lot of resistances to powerful physical hits that are common, like the hits of Great Tusk and Landorus and stuff. So Araquanid in the lead slot isn't worried about dying too often, so it can afford to run this Kustap Berry, which activates when you're on low health and allows you to move first in the priority bracket on your next move, so you can do one more thing before you go down. And Araquanid also has access to Mirror Coat, which is cool. You can reflect back special attacks. A lot of electric types are trying to hit you, so that will get the jump on them with a big swing. Just a one-shot, and then you can Sticky Web with the Kustap Berry, and that's a great opener to a game, isn't it? You've just traded with a Pokemon and made your hazard. That's positive for you. So as a Sticky Web setter, this is looking pretty nice into the current metagame. Endeavor is another way you can take advantage of the Kustap Berry synergy bringing them to low health for an easy follow-up on a teammate. Araquanid, I like its design too. I think it's got a lot of unique stuff going on. I like that it has a helmet that's a bubble of water. It's got the ability that totally matches its design. Even though it's, pretty weak compared to most Pokemon, it's showing some real value in competitive here. So I got some respect for this Pokemon, and I think it's cool, and right now it's really having its day. It's really having its moment in Gen 9 OU right now. Up next is Ribombee, another popular sticky web setter. Before Araquanid, this was the most popular one, and it was doing a great job at the role. This is a bug fairy type Pokemon. It's got Shield Dust, which is a good ability, immunity to secondary effects, and the stats are actually alright on this. You got a really high speed stat, to be honest, which helps as a hazard setter. Just get the hazard on the field pretty reliably. You outrun most things. And 95 special attack is not much, but fairy typing Moonblast with stab is still going to hit pretty hard with this on any super effective target. In Gen 9, that was great against Great Tusk. It's good against Samurott Hisui and other popular leads. And then beyond that, you've got Stun Spore to inflict some paralysis, at least do another thing. Psychic Noise. It also gets, Quiver Dance, and it's got a pretty nice move pool to take advantage of that in lower tiers. This has OU value, Uber's value as well, where it's a pretty reliable sticky web setter up there in many contexts and many generations. Ever since this thing's introduction, it's been one of the better sticky web setters in the game that can do a lot more than just set sticky web. It's got actual utility beyond that, actual value beyond that. The typing is also unique. Bug Fairy, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting, that fairy typing. Fantastic type to have. Offering immunities, great damage on Moonblast. Psychic Noise is a new addition that blocks healing. That comes up sometimes. Overall, it's an impressive Pokemon. It's an impressive and functional Pokemon. Up next, we've got Scolipede, who is very high on the list for a few reasons. Scolipede is a bug poison type Pokemon with the ability Speed Boost, granting that ever valuable speed stat increase every turn. And it has Baton Pass, so it can do what Ninjask did as well. It has the Speed Pass potential, but I think it's a better Pokemon on top of that with superior offensive stats, access to options like Stab Megahorn, Aqua Tail, Poison Jab, actual options, Earthquake, a great physical move pool. So Scolipede is not only threatening to pass powerful Swords Dance and speed boosts to enemies, it's also an imposing threat itself. And it's part of the reason Baton Pass did get banned from so many generations. Scolipede was the prime abuser in many instances. It was an excellent abuser, but beyond just the Baton Pass role, this is a pretty damn solid Pokemon. In Gen 7, Baton Pass is banned, but you can still use Scolipede with its Swords Dance Speed Boost combo as a boost sweeper, and it's pretty good at it. Scolipede has Aqua Tail, which is able to hit Landorus Therian. This set right here is pretty good, with wide threatening coverage and hard-hitting stab. It's got a very solid attack stat. And something that just ramps by itself. I mean, we saw how powerful Blaziken was in Gen 5, banned to Ubers. Scolipede's kind of a similar idea. It's not quite that good, but this is a significant cut above many early game bugs. It looks a bit more imposing. Visually, this looks like a more powerful guy. It doesn't look like a little idiot. This looks like you'd better be careful against this fellow. And that reflects in how it actually plays out. It's a pretty scary Pokemon that can do more than you might think. So not only for its history on Baton Pass teams, but for its inherent strengths, I'm giving Scolipede a lot of respect on this list. And at the very top of the list, I am going to put Low Kicks. The new Gen 9 early game bug is one of the most successful examples of an early game bug we have ever seen. Low Kicks has a really cool design, I love it. It's got a bug dark typing, which you don't see that often. It's a great stab combination. And it has Tinted Lens, but this is a physical attacking Tinted Lens Pokemon. I think it's the first example of a Tinted Lens Pokemon with more physical leaning stat spread. You could almost view this as a physical counterpart to Yanmega, and that has proved so far to be a little bit better than Yanmega's special attacking prowess, because I think that the typing is better suited to the role with Knockoff and Sucker Punch at your disposal. Powerful bug-type physical attacks like First Impression, U-Turn, and Leech Life. With Tinted Lens, you can run just Stab and ignore resistances very well. Knockoff is such a good move that makes permanent progress. U-Turn is momentum generation. You're attacking, dealing significant damage on resistances, and then pivoting out. First Impression is an amazing move. It only works the first turn you're in, but it's a 90 power priority attack. Such a good revenge KO option, especially because they can't resist it because of your Tinted Lens. Now, low kicks does have a classic early game bug stat spread here with very poor stats. But honestly, everything else about it is doing some serious heavy lifting. And with the perfect offensive stab combo, the great ability, and the outstanding move pool, low kicks is actually on the rise in OU as well. Gen 9 OU, it's a pretty viable choice. You can't go too wrong with a low kicks team. It deals consistent damage, it has everything you want in an attacker, and it's a great revenge killer. So low kicks, I think, is a very functional, competitive Pokemon. It's not doing anything game-breaking in like the anything goes format or anything like some of these Pokemon. But it's just an honest, solid, and powerful concept that has been well executed. And even though it does have that early game bug status, it's sort of goofy looking, it has the poor stats. This one has defied the odds, and it's an impressive Pokemon. It is an impressive Pokemon that has done great work in Gen 9 so far. I wonder even if it will have longevity in the future, if this idea will stand the test of time. If this can function now with poor stats, what's to say it can't do the same next generation? We'll have to see if low kicks has such a legacy. But I think I'm happy giving low kicks the title of best early route bug we have ever seen. It's just good. It's just a good Pokemon. And that'll do it for my list, folks. What do you think of this fun bunch of bugs? The category of Pokemon probably worst of all. Home to some of the worst Pokemon in the series, but some of them can be good and competitive sometimes. And isn't that wonderful? Who's your favorite of these early route bugs? Mine would probably be Araquanid. I think it's a very cool design. But what about you? Let me know down below, and thank you for watching.